Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. We're here reporting from the ETSI NFV number 11 in San Jose in California. And I'm delighted to be joined in this interview by Jai Menon, who is the VP of Dell Research and Chief Research Officer and Head of Dell Research. That's a longest job title, Jai, and an enormous job. It must be quite something to be in charge of all the stuff that you're doing. Great to see you again. This meeting, as it says on the tin, is about NFV. Why is NFV of such importance to Dell?
Well, it's very rarely as a technologist that you get to work on something that is truly disruptive. A lot of times people are working on incremental technologies. NFV, to me, is a truly disruptive technology, one that can has the potential to significantly disrupt in a very nice way, in a good way, the telecom industry. And so it's exciting to be part of that, to be able to bring the capabilities of virtualization and cloud to this new marketplace. And, one of the things that we have done is we have looked at how we see the NFV technology evolve, the kind of impact it can have on the service provider industry. And when we do the math and we look at the potential for this, we have concluded that it's going to be one of the most important workloads and the most pervasive workloads that are going to be running on servers in the future. For example, by about 2020, our calculations tell us that as much as 20% of servers in the world are going to be running this workload. It's probably going to be one of the 4 most important workloads running on anybody's servers. And Dell, as a leader in servers, we want to have our fair share of the servers that are going to be running NFV, because it's going to be anywhere from 1/5 to 1/4 of all of the servers in the world. So you can see, as a company that prides itself on servers, this is an opportunity for us. It's a big opportunity. It's a big boon, I believe, to the telco industry, and I think Dell has a great opportunity to play a role in it. You can see why this would be very important for us.
A year or so ago, Jai, Dell wasn't particularly big in NFV at all, but you picked up the gauntlet and ran with it, to mix a metaphor, and now you're a very major player in NFV. We're here at an ETSI event. How would you describe ETSI's role in NFV development, and how important, again, relating back to Dell, is that to you?
Yeah, so I think that, in many ways, I view what ETSI has done as really helping to really create this market around NFV. We got involved about 2.5 years ago with NFV, and I think it was really because of the work of the ETSI NFV committee, the ISG. Bringing together, in the beginning it was 26 operators, and then it became a much larger number, but having one way to communicate as a vendor in this space, to communicate and hear a consistent point of view across all of these operators, that was very, very important to us. And I think ETSI's leadership, thought leadership, the vision that they've demonstrated has been very important. They have also been realized, as time has passed, that it is important, for example, to start an open source initiative. And I would view the work that they did in spinning off the OPNFV activities, I view that as a parent-child relationship. It's almost like a parent that's created an important offspring, having recognized the need for that. So once again, that vision to recognize that you need that. A lot of people talk about, how do these two relate to each other now? I mean, this is really parent and child. Of course, the child will do certain things. I view both as very important, continuing to play very critical roles. You need the kind of work that ETSI continues to do to drive consensus, to drive standards for stability. They're looking very carefully at what kind of security requirements are needed. And that's not going to come out of an open source movement. You need the kind of thing that ETSI continues to do. So very important work. And they're already beginning to take it to the next level of, at the end of the day, the thing that matters is the virtual network functions. You can have an infrastructure, but if the infrastructure doesn't run any functions, it doesn't do anything useful to anybody. And ETSI has already elevated itself. If you were to ask them, give me the one elevator phrase of what are you working on now, they would say, we're trying to create a market for these virtual network functions. Very important concept. Things like OPNFV are still at the infrastructure layer. They too will move to VNFs, but you can see how ETSI has been at the forefront, has been driving things. Their vision's very important. Trying to decide what to standardize is very important, etc.
Okay, thank you. Now, a rather more generalised question, Jai. NFV is usually presented as being something unique to the telco market, particularly pertinent to it, and this is where its main purpose lies. Is that the case, do you think, or is there a larger remit for NFV?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and it's our belief and my belief that actually there's a broader trend in the IT industry, and NFV is a very, very important example of that broader trend. So in the future, things that used to need special purpose hardware no longer do. You can actually do them on standard servers. That's the broad trend. The telco industry, and NFV in particular, has said, let's apply that trend to the telco space where we do have lots of special purpose equipment that are not servers, and let's move them all to servers. But in fact, it's part of this broader trend of what we've been calling the software-based data center. The software-based data center, it's our view of what happens after the software-defined data center. As you know, the software-defined data center says software is going to be used to manage and provision all of the resources in a data center. But the resources themselves could be hardware. So we have server boxes, we have storage boxes, we have network boxes, we have firewall boxes, we have router boxes. There's a lot of boxes in a data center. And software-defined data center says, I will use software to manage all of those resources. Imagine a data center, and imagine you blew the roof off of the data center and looked at it from the top. Today, if you looked at it, you'll find red boxes that are servers and blue boxes that are storage and green and yellow and all these different kinds of boxes. In a software-based data center, you look at it from the top, there's only going to be one color of box, and that's the server. Everything else is just software on those servers, and storage and networking and firewalls are just software. And that's a software-based data center.
Now, final question to you, Jai. Asking you to put you've already looked at 2020 in answering the last question, but keep your crystal ball in front of you for a bit. When we were talking off camera before, we were talking about the concept of the high velocity cloud. Yes. And I'd like you to explain what that is as part of the answer to this. So how do you see NFV evolving, and what are you as Chief Research Officer and Head of Dell Research actually focusing on more than anything else?
Very good. So I think, as we've mentioned before, I see this NFV journey as about a 10-year journey. We're not going to overnight convert all of these hardware boxes into software running on servers. It's going to be very similar to how virtualization happened in the data center. It was an 8 or 10-year journey. VMware probably became a company 8 or 10 years ago. At that time, hardly any servers were virtualized. Today, maybe 80% of the servers are virtualized. I think the same thing's going to happen here in the telco space. Today, very little is virtualized. NFV, maybe in 10 years, 70% of those boxes will be virtualized. So it's going to be a journey. If I were to end with some thoughts on, what are some of the other aspects of what we see rolling out in the future, one, we want it to be able to enable very easy programmability to be able to create these new NFV functions. If all we did was take existing functions in existing hardware boxes and just move them over to software on a server, we would have failed. What we want to do is create an ecosystem where a small startup or a very smart programmer can just go in and create a new function on this platform to be able to create new capabilities for our telcos. And I think that's key. To be able to do that, you need to make it very easy to be able to write this kind of code. You want to hide away all the abstractions of million packets per second and how do I twiddle the packets. If you leave it like that, not many people will write new code and new services. So we got to make that easy. And then, lastly, we see a truly open environment. We see the ability for telcos to be able to buy their infrastructure and their servers from company A, all of the management and orchestration software from company B, and all of the VNFs that ultimately provide the capability from company C, D, and E, and all of that should just work together. And that's our vision of where we want the world to go, and we're working hard to enable it.
Absolutely fascinating. Jay Menon, thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.